For a whole week, the girl was on the brink of death. She lies there trying to breathe through her mouth so she doesn't suffocate. Lilian had a terrible fever, despite the fact that everyone around her was trying their best to cure her. My eyes don't want to open. I want to close them and go back to sleep. Going into oblivion would have been the best thing for the young lady. Her gaze shifts somewhere to the side while the beauty tries not to cry. Memories are transported to another reality. A hand grasps a book in a prominent blue cover. Such coloring couldn't help but attract attention. In a past life, the heroine once read a book that talked about herself. It was weird, but that's the way it was already. No accurate information was ever given even on the topmost pages or in the table of contents. I wanted to know more. Lilian Islar, a beautiful young girl who has yet to see the world at all. I wonder what she was like after all, despite her character. A lot of people were saying bad things. One of the servants believed that the maiden had no right to become a mother, not under any circumstances. According to the other maids, the woman is obscenely selfish. She always thought she was the only one suffering while everyone else was doing great. A maid in a black uniform sits by the bed, Lord, wailing about how this could have been done. Half-brother, it's like he waited until his parents died to pull this off. Stuttering with fear, the girl asks what the big deal is. She doesn't understand the whole situation. The words of the engagement, at which it was as if she'd been sold, put the brunette in a stupor. His eyes widened with shock. Hands begin to shake, for it is impossible to take away the fine trembling. I can't believe it was just sold to some stranger. Trying to reassure Lilian, the nurse talks about something important. She feels the need to make the best of it. She promises to care until the very end, to which she gets the desired response. Tears come to the maiden's eyes. Jumping up, mistress almost clings to the neck of her interlocutor. It is almost unreal to express my gratitude in full. Snuggling into the maid's neck, the brunette thanks, mumbling something quietly. According to the woman, she should just listen to her. In this way, the maiden was made a victim. The nurse wants to be obeyed, thus luring her into her trap. Clasping an expensive necklace around her neck, the maid remarks that Iskar deserves at least that much reward for making her suffer so much. Making a fool of herself, she was only hungry for treasure. Being pregnant, Lilian was completely depressed, but the nurse promised that an heir would help the cause. The girl got pregnant in order to get at least a drop of attention from her husband, however. After the birth of the child, things did not go according to plan. The doctor and the maids who delivered the baby gave the worst news you could hear in this world. The woman lost the ability to have children. This little man was the first and last heir of his lineage. The baby sits on the rug by the fireplace playing with toys. Some improvised means served as entertainment. Belle sits quite close by, but tries not to pay attention. Too much noise, and my head is starting to give way. Turning her head, the lady begins her tirade about how bad she feels. The child doesn't understand everything, so don't get excited. Stepping toward the fireplace, the lady remarks that it was her child who made her so. If she could get pregnant again, she'd get more attention. The little boy, almost crying, pulls back, not realizing what his fault was. Due to her age, it's understandable, but the brunette doesn't stop. Raising her hand, the girl swerves, not in control of her emotions. This move will cost her dearly, and that is the undeniable truth. A tea ceremony is held in the castle's beautiful garden. Lilian spends time with her friends, who ask about why the young gentleman is maimed so often. One lady puts her hand to her heart, remembering that he even managed to fall down the stairs that time. Perhaps such coincidences bother the mother. Trying not to show it, the brunette, stroking her hair, assures me that everything is fine. She always does a wonderful job of healing the boy with love. No one knows the real events, and that the Duchess is to blame for all the injuries. Rumors never cease to creep into the castle. Already all the servants are aware of what goes on behind closed doors between mother and son. A blonde young man, standing near the window and gazing thoughtlessly into the distance, starts a conversation. The wife treats the child badly. One of the butlers, who is standing near the table, confirms his words. The girl is really acting inappropriately. The guy's probably going to be pissed. It's scary, but at the same time, even so, the girl will get at least a drop of attention. The silence drags on for an obscenely long time. The couple finally gets to talk for the first time since their wedding. The man suddenly talks about how he doesn't care. It is the lady's responsibility to figure out what is going on her own. The words hurt my heart. The beauty clearly hadn't expected such indifference, even from such a cold man. Tying the ropes, the maiden curses Damon in her thoughts. It is impossible to forgive a man who ignores his wife. Lilian considers herself most unfortunate, while her son lies unconscious at her own hands. She's about to do the most horrible thing. Pushing off the floor, the stool falls, and the girl is sent into oblivion. The man will pay for what he did. Iskar met her end alone, next to her son. The soul wounds left by such a mother were healed by the book's protagonist. With the help of the girl, the protagonist defeats her father, who has completely lost his mind after the death of his wife, and the novel ends. By the author's design, Lilian's only role was to push the plot toward a happy ending, first dropping her husband and son into an abyss of despair. Staring up at the ceiling, the beauty ponders her fate. She certainly doesn't intend to repeat the life of a loser. All is repeated as the nurse begins her whiny tirade. This time the brunette calls out, silencing her. Putting up her hands in feigned concern, the woman opens her eyes in surprise. A small hand holds out an expensive necklace trimmed with emeralds. That thing belonged to the maid's mother. The maid asks why she is being given such a valuable item, as it will continue to serve their kind. The girl only grins, refusing. The heroine no longer wants to tolerate such a terrible treatment, so the lady is fired, and the thing is her severance pay. Finding herself confused, the woman interjects, trying to understand the purpose. Such jokes are completely unfunny in her opinion. Young mistress is not going to joke around. It's pretty serious, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's a singular and willful decision. The maid asks what she did wrong, but steps back after the tirade. She bullied her brother instead of her mother, and then wanted to fight them. Deciding to take action, the blue-eyed woman gives an ultimatum. If the nurse doesn't leave on her own, the girl will scream about her necklace being stolen. Stepping aside, the maid repeats over and over again, as if into oblivion, that she doesn't want to leave, even if there is no choice. Trying to recoil, the brunette continues to resist, but quickly gives up. Osoba is in no position to make the rules right now. Apologizing more out of politeness, not really meaning anything, the lady leaves the room in anger, leaving the lady sitting on the bed alone. Relief can't help but take over the mind. At last, in the name of a new and proper life, the lady got rid of the burden. The first problem is solved, but there remains another one that is much scarier. Free brother will remain as adamant as ever. Things were different in a previous life. The girl grabs her head, starting to cry because it's hard to believe her ears. As soon as the beauty heard about the engagement, she was senseless for a week. Things were picking up some pretty serious momentum. Cedric Islar, who is the master of the land of Turin, sitting at the table, asks the simplest of questions. He wonders what happened. Folding her hands in a gesture of calm, the maiden smiles as if nothing had happened, announcing that she had something she would like to say. Putting his hand to his face, the man tries to remain calm. He's already tired enough, but now his sister wants to ask for more. For starters, the easiest thing to do was apologize for the impulsive reaction to the news of the engagement. Continuing her conversation, the lady smiles more than before, radiating humility. She's fine with the engagement and respects her brother's choice. My glasses almost flew off because of the surprise. The guy seemed to expect anything but such words. He didn't mean to be rude, but it couldn't be helped. The castle seemed to freeze, trying not to change anything, with only one strange question floating through the air. Trying not to betray his confusion, the young man tries to interrogate and clarify the details. I can't believe the brunette is saying this in all seriousness. Keeping the conversation going, the girl chuckles, wising up to the fact that her brother is clearly in shock. She thought about her behavior for a bit, and that's exactly what made her realize the whole situation. Without broaching the subject, Cedric agrees, but at the same time he needs a more thorough explanation if things are indeed being considered. Realizing that the conversation will be relatively long, the lady is already prepared in advance, just as she has answers ready for everything. While Lilian wasn't feeling well, she had plenty of time to think things through and get her bearings. Everything the girl has is obtained only because she bears the name of Turin. Had the great luck to be born into such a family, but so far the heroine has only had fun. Such carefree days the girl owes to her family name, but the family has an obligation. The oath to protect residents is an important part. Clutching her dress with her hands, Islar continues the conversation. She has no right to take all things received for granted. All of the above was the very thing the heroine was thinking about. She should have thought about it much sooner. Special rights give rise to special duties. Such words are the most appropriate words to use in this situation. Not believing his ears, the brother puts his hand to his mouth. He feels like saying something, but he should think about it first. Looking somewhere off to the side, the man notices one very important thing. The girl sounds just like his father. The girl didn't quite hear what she needed to hear, so she asked again. The answer came out crumpled as the man assured her there was no point in worrying. The The lady had indeed thought it over quite seriously, and now there was no backing out. She should have done more preparation for the engagement. Brunette, Cedric's stepmother's daughter, so it makes sense that she's not well liked. It would be strange if it were the other way around. It wouldn't be a bad thing if the heroine gave at least some reason to improve the opinion of her a little bit. It was worth a shot. My brother is probably busy, so it was worth stopping there today. That's all the lady had to say, so now it's time to bow out. Stopping the heroine halfway through, Islar asks if the girl has any questions. He should have asked that before she left. Freezing for just a split second, the blue-eyed girl realizes that she had always asked a lot of questions before, but now there was no need. The first question of interest is, to whom is the lady engaged? Cedric doesn't know all the details of his past life, so the task is clear. Belle didn't think she was allowed to ask such a thing, for she was too young to know the details. It's an engagement, but really just a secret union. Looking thoughtfully away, the man denies it. He can't hear his little sister's thoughts, so he talks about other things in turn. This wedding is directly related to the brunette, so she should at least know her groom's name. Gawking at her companion, the heroine noticed that her apology had calmed the guy down much more than expected. Starting to give a payoff, the young man stammers, saying that if she doesn't want it, then she doesn't have to, but he is interrupted. Carefully opening the drawer door, my hand reaches for the scroll. The girl already knows everything up front, but it's worth listening again. Taking the sheet, the guy reads out the name. My soulmate will be Emperor Leningrad. He is a prince, however. Such a title is not for nothing. As the plot makes clear, the guy is a relative of the current emperor, and thus one of those entitled to the throne of this empire as well. Blondie is also widely known as the Knight of the Golden Sword, guardian and intercessor of his kind. The brother asks, "Are you surprised?" She tries to pretend that she didn't expect him to say that. The Rufenbein family is known to be the most warlike, even among the other emperors. They are the true gods of war, and that is the truth. Exhaling air, the beauty remarks that her husband is a pretty great man, from all accounts. The lack of interest in the throne is even bizarre. Ignoring the exact response, the guy asks if there are any other questions of interest, though no answer follows. Taking his eyes off the papers again, the brunette says it's fine. If there are no more questions, then everything is going according to plan. Carefully looking at the interlocutor, the girl is thinking about something of her own. It's strange that her brother is so soft on her today. Shifting her gaze to the young man, the beauty noticed one very important thing, so she runs up and grabs his shirt. It's important for her to know how much he slept tonight. Getting a little on her toes, the girl keeps prying everything out. My eyes are a little puffy, which means 3 hours tops. The man may have gotten even 2 hours of sleep, and he should be more careful with his health if he wants results. The blunt answer cuts off all doubt, because she shouldn't care. Not realizing what her fault is, the heroine asks how she can not worry. This guy is her only family, and that's natural. Turning his head, you could tell from Cedric's eyes that he hadn't quite expected the conversation to take such a dangerous turn. It always seemed to the young man that he was all alone in this white world. After the accident, everything seems unreal, giving vague concepts. Darkness, and only darkness, covers the entire void, wrapping it in its embrace. But it's as if someone is able to help. The little girl is like a ray of light in a sad life, appearing as if from nowhere. It can't help but warm the soul under any circumstances. The man couldn't have expected someone so familiar and so kind. It's like helping someone in their hour of need when they seem ready to give up. The lady glows, radiating joy and a smile, bringing her essence to mitigate trauma and circumstances. Thoughts swirled frantically in the head of the head. He couldn't forget something so important. The young lady-like reminder worked perfectly, tugging at the heartstrings. Reaching out, fingers burrowed into her hair, patting the top of her interlocutor's head a little. These two really are a family, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Cedric thinks of his sister with the warmest feelings, while the lady thinks that the interlocutor must be occupying his thoughts with something else. Deciding to change the subject, the brunette suddenly takes it back. She needed something from the man after all, and hiding it would be useless. Exhaling air and relaxing a bit, the young man is well aware that the request is not a difficult one, and it will not cost any trouble to fulfill it. Trying to make as pleading a face as possible, the damsel suddenly mentions the afternoon nap. It would have gone in his brother's favor, and there's no arguing that. Even better would be to get at least 3 hours of sleep. Making huge eyes, the girl continues to plead, peering and insisting. Setting the guy down in a chair, the brunette continues her manipulation by claiming that everyone in the Islar family doesn't break their promises. Only laughter is heard in response. No one would want to disappoint a child, so the young man agrees, and since that is the wish, it is not to be crossed in any way. Smiling, the man realizes that this would be the best solution. He was really tired, and to top it all off, he had someone to take care of him. The time has come, so the lady heads for the door, and then, opening it, wishes her brother to get a good night's rest before getting on with the rest of the business. Cedric settles down on the couch, putting a pillow under his head. It had been a long time since he'd had a decent night's sleep, so things would be much better now. The butler, standing outside the door, calls out to the gentleman, and then announces that he is entering the study. Walking inside, he is surprised to see Islar asleep. Pulling back, the guy calls out to Alan and then, without thinking long, asks for an increase in the budget that is planned to be spent on Lilian. Spending is usually a substantial amount, but nothing out of the ordinary is included there. It is worth increasing the amount by about a factor of 5 for the full provision and happiness of the sister. The servant froze attentively, listening to his master. Perhaps he wanted to say something, but he dared not utter a word. The maids who were next to the mistress offer a sideways glance. Therein lies something extraordinarily marvelous, definitely worthy of everyone's attention all around. A huge pile of colorful toys, boxes with pretty bows and caskets stand gathered in one pile. These all gifts were sent by none other than the head. The girl lowers her interested gaze, hoping she can figure out what's what and why it's all necessary. There's also a beautiful ivory hairpin encrusted with large blue-colored stones that glow in the sun, snow-white slippers that you want to touch, made with a lining of expensive white fox fur and a pearl-colored robe. Next up is a bonnet with subtle dainty ruffles that conceal the face. Wonderful picture books decorated in gold and gilt. The most cherished dream is ready to come true, because there is even if perfectly assembled easel, as well as bright-colored pencils of excellent quality. I don't want to believe it, but there is even a necklace of diamonds as pure as a drop of water that dazzles everyone around. At first, thoughts are centered on how beautiful it is after all, but the impression is quickly extinguished. He seems to have sent anything that might please the young noble mistress. Thoughts swarmed in the little head, giving no peace at all. Why did things suddenly turn this way? A virgin has never even received a gift. Wasn't that strange? One of the maids, standing somewhere behind her all this time, notices her mistress's confusion. She wants to cheer her up somehow and give her hope. Squatting down, thus catching the brunette's eye, the girl offers to touch one of the items she has been provided. Trying to deny and dismiss everything that is going on, the beauty feels a strange sense of shame. The bear is nice to touch, and touching it, just once, is a must for everyone around you. Realizing the whole situation, the look freezes, and the heroine herself agrees to the proposal. The little child inside her is overjoyed, for such gifts were never to be expected. Not about to get behind the little girl, the maid talks about how such beauty can't be touched just a little. The head personally sent this over for the mistress to own. Having long since given up, the young lady reaches out to finally touch the cherished and so beautiful toy. The handle makes contact with the soft paw of the toy, which really looks and feels just wonderful. Joy and childlike delight is instantly displayed in the beauty's gaze. She freezes for a split second, trying to check all the thoughts in her head, and then continues to stare off to the side. I wanted to scream with delight, but I should have saved my face. It seems that the engagement laid a great burden on the hero's soul, and now he is trying to compensate for it. The guy really wondered if Lilian was pleased. After all, the things provided were quite beautiful and valuable, so should have gotten a reaction. One of the maids turns to the other toy, offering to look at the thing. Another gift is very nice, but the girl seems more excited about the gifts than she is. The girl notices something familiar, so she approaches the lady, asking what it is. The thing is clearly getting attention. The room is lit by the morning sun. Looking in the windows, it's about to awaken everyone on the estate, realizing its importance. Cedric's attention is drawn to someone's voice. Thoth clearly hadn't expected to see anyone since this morning, but he should have kept the conversation going at a moderate pace. Realizing exactly who has come, the boy asks what Lilian needs again. It comes out a little harsh, but she's more than sure he's not being mean. Opening the door with her back, the beauty doesn't give any sign, and simply states that she just walked in for no reason, as she had no intentions of doing so. The face darkens with clouding of consciousness, even if the owner clearly doesn't want to hurt anyone. It's not clear what that "just because" means, since it's usually only called upon when needed. 12-year-old Lilian immediately burst into tears on the spot. but there was something distinctly different about this girl, as if she was completely different, even if she didn't want to admit it. The current heroine knows her brother, who took over as head at the age of 21. That's about all the information that would be available at that age. In the future, the lad will be the master of the land of Turin, and no boundaries will be seen to him. Right now, he's just crushed under the weight of his sudden role as head. The young man just plain needs a regular vacation, which could help a lot. Last time the lady had a reason to ask for a promise, but this time she's definitely not going to be listened to. In that case, running the mischievous thoughts through her head, the brunette decides to act in a completely different way. She talks about how they are each other's only brother and sister, which means you could just miss them. The head freezes, trying to digest all the information given without any loss. The man in the back is also in mild shock. Still speechless, the girl talks about how happy she was to receive the gifts. She would like to thank the guy properly for his kindness to the young lady. Not stopping to write some important paper, Cedric squints slightly, realizing that something strange is going to happen here, even if the fact itself pleases him. Bowing his head, the guy says that if you don't like something, you can always replace it or deal with it yourself. It looks like the host lost that argument. Waving her hands in protest, the lady resists, as she enjoyed all the toys, which are quite cute. She'd never had that before, and then everything changed. Sad thoughts do not leave the mind even during the tirade. It must be compensation, since the stepmother's daughter who treated him so badly can't like his brother. The girl bows, gathering the hem of her dress as if in curtsy. It's important for her to express her gratitude without any repercussions or awkwardness. Holding out her foot with a beautiful slipper that was one of the engagement gifts, the beauty talks about the comfort of the item and also smiles. Despite everything that was going on, the brunette was indeed very grateful. After all, she's not lying when she says she's never had such things. It seems weird, but that's normal. The guy expresses no emotion, remarking that it's a relief that his sister liked everything. In his mind, he promises that he'll buy some clothes too, because they're worth replacing. Rising, the beauty heads to the table, which is already set and beautifully arranged. She assures me she has something in return. The heroine learned the tea ceremony last time, so if the young man doesn't mind, she'll treat him to some delicious tea. The cups and teapot are now fully finished, and kind of hinting at use. The host expresses no emotion, sinking into his thoughts without too much resistance. The butler, standing quite close by, puts his hand to his mouth, trying not to express much surprise. Finally, regaining the power of speech, the man interjects how is it that she was able to organize all this herself. The interviewee just smiles and says it's simple. Fixing her hair and tucking it behind her ear, the girl thinks about inhibitions. They would be unwelcome, for she wanted to keep trying to improve and make tea. My brother's eyes widen, for instead of listening to the story, he has turned his attention to his wrist. It's bandaged, so the brunette asks where she managed to hurt herself. The brunette assures her that everything is absolutely fine and nothing bad has happened. She's not in any pain at all, but maybe that's because she's already had time to die. The heroine planned everything down to the very last detail. After all, she's much more at ease now, knowing everything ahead of time. However, something is keeping me on my toes, and it's unsettling. Exhaling air, the young man tries to calm himself, realizing that there's nothing to worry about here. The sister keeps assuring me that everything is fine while it shows. Agreeing to the proffered tea after about 10 minutes, the girl gladly accepts this consent and takes up the teapot, looking at the object with a concentrated gaze. Picking up the utensil, the heroine holds the thing up to the cup and then begins to pour boiling water over the perfectly smelling herb with some sort of flavoring. Tea is one of the most important crops. Everyone knows this, as tea came from the sea only recently, so it's still all new to the empire. In the future, the tea ceremony will become fashionable. There is no need to say anything, for the maiden already knows everything. It will become a kind of hobby for Lilian. The locality, the method of collection, and the time and method of brewing affect the flavor of the tea in their own way. It wasn't his scent that the maiden liked, but the warmth that spread through her body. The tea party provided warmth even in the coldest winters. That's why Sister wanted to brew this tea for Cedric. It's worth brewing as slowly as possible. Islar sits waiting, folding his arms and not giving any sign. It cost him nothing to occupy himself for any few minutes, as it all leads to one thing. The heroine tries not to be distracted by anything and focus on what she is doing at the moment. She is called out, thus confusing her a bit. Bowing his head, expressing his displeasure, Cedric notes that the girl has been fiddling for too long. He doesn't want to be too harsh, but that's the way it is. Control isn't the most important thing right now. Realizing that she's brooding and caught up in all that's going on, the lady tries not to show her disappointment. The individual only apologizes, trying to do so as quietly as possible. Putting the kettle back on the table, the maiden realizes that everything is ready. She doesn't want to speed up, lest she lose precious time next to her brother, but there's clearly no choice. The young man seems depressed. Perhaps it's all because he made a remark to his sister, and now he's ashamed, or something strange is once again taking over his mind. Opening her eyes, the young lady notices that something is not right here. He can't express such emotions simply due to the fact that the interlocutor is silent and stalling with everything going on. Coughing slightly, the beauty raises her hand as a sign that it's safe to begin and asks to taste her masterpiece. Humming, Islar bows, then takes the mug in his hands. The smell doesn't seem as bad as before, and curiosity takes over, especially when asked to do something. Taking just one sip, the guy freezes, realizing that the taste is something strange. He wants to say something or express his emotions, but it's too difficult. The tea is too bitter and cloyingly sweet. This combination is quite difficult to fit in one cup, but it is realistic. I don't want to upset my sister, but that's what I'm going to have to do. Following her brother's example, the brunette takes a cup and sips her tea. Without thinking long, she announces her verdict. Oddly enough, it's not tasty at all, even if everyone agrees with it. Trying to dodge the subject, Cedric says it's not too bad yet in his independent opinion. Grinning, the girl is surprised at such a kind-hearted appraisal of her talents. You shouldn't force anyone to drink. But by bowing her head, the girl offers to drink with the idea that she has put all her love and soul into it. The guy freezes for a second. Such words seemed like something commonplace, but he had never heard such a thing from this girl before. I wanted to ask a lot of questions, but I'd better shut up now. There was silence in the hall. The young people weren't too uncomfortable, but talking about something important is always much more interesting than reality. Without showing any sign of it, the head only quietly, as if unintentionally, smiles the warmest smile. He is pleased with the kind of care he has never received. The blue-eyed girl seemed to peer into his very soul, giving no chance to remain indifferent. She expects nothing, yet her eyes speak for themselves. The mugs are sent back to the table to remain waiting to be picked up by the servants. The tea party continues on not the worst note. Settling back in his chair a little, the guy covers his eyes. It had been a long time since he had relaxed like this, and so this relaxation was quite pleasant. Attention is drawn to the interlocutor, who asks if she can make tea tomorrow too. Glancing at her brother, she quickly hesitates, saying that if he's busy, then there's nothing to be done. Realizing the whole situation, the young man quickly interrupts the beauty. It's okay, he doesn't have anything to do, which means she can get everything she needs ready one more time. Smiling and literally glowing with happiness, Lilian can't stop gushing with gratitude. She is pleased with the fact that she was allowed to do it that way. She promises that she will practice to know how to brew the finest tea. The man wanted to stop the flow of words, but the girl is already giving notice that she will come tomorrow. In a split second, the brunette is right by the door, swinging one open and continuing to say goodbye. She seems completely oblivious to being called out and asked to stop. The mood still remains elevated as the maiden hurries down the hallway. The great thing is that she left much earlier, because if she'd clung to her brother a little longer, he wouldn't have been happy. Bending double, the young man puts a hand to his face, sighing doomfully. The butler, as if nothing had happened, walks up from behind the chair and asks what's wrong. Taking a break from his musings, Cedric asks one very important thing. He wonders that if he wanted to transfer the land to his sister, how long it might take in terms of time. Shock is displayed on the servant's face. He doesn't understand what just happened and why the decision changed so quickly. Mistress will marry and leave someday, for marriage is coming soon. As if collecting the tears that are ready to pour from his eyes, the guy assures that it's too early to think about it, or even talk about it. We'll have to see how the situation goes from here. Trying to ask any questions that might change the host's mind, the man gets wet that Islar has already made arrangements with the groom. You don't want to break a deal over nothing. The sun still wouldn't stop blazing, literally heating up the roof and every other part of the castle. The heat never seems to go away. The girl has been following somewhere since morning, carrying a tray of tea and sweets. She is called out, thus forcing her to stop. The servant girl behind her similarly falters. The man turns out to be none other than the knight Havis. He puts a hand to his chest, assuring that he doesn't need to be called a knight, but can simply address him as an assistant. A little unaware of the situation, the girl only flaps her eyes, silently agreeing. Alan has been a loyal vassal of Cedric since long ago. This guy is really very loyal to his master and friend. He is on the list of people who were mistreated by the heroine's mother. There wasn't a day that she missed a beating. He hated the girl a lot, but things had changed a bit lately, and it was immediately noticeable. Pulling himself out of his thoughts, the man asks if the brunette is headed for the head. My gaze shifts to the tray the lady is carrying, barely holding it in her hands. Somehow, never wanting to get any help, this little person tries to do everything with her powers. Without thinking about anything at all, the knight suddenly says it's his mistake. Not realizing what she is talking about, the lady raises her head and looks into the eyes of her interlocutor. It is his duty as assistant and estate manager to see that there are enough servants in the house, but obviously there are not enough people here. Apparently, the guy misunderstood why the girl was bringing the tea herself instead of asking the servants. Turning around and noticing the maid's fear, the heroine rushes to assure her that everything is fine. Bowing his head, the young man offers to carry this tray for her. Such a suggestion is quite expected, but it's worth noting that doubt is still lightly creeping into my mind. A look of concentration drills the interlocutor. Alan seems to be expecting something. Perhaps it is the expectation of a bad reaction or wrong action toward the servant. Trying not to show it, the girl snorts. This performance is painfully pathetic. A test that they decided to run without any warning is not very reassuring. The servants of the manor are all loyal citizens of Turin, and if the heroine doesn't trust them, then she is neglecting their abilities. It's as if the young man is asking if the girl realizes the whole situation, so he agrees to the proposal. Withering, the man notices that Lilian is acting rather professionally, not immediately starting to apologize, admitting his mistake. Cedric is busy with his important papers as usual, but he clearly has to interrupt when he hears a knock. Islar Jr. stands near the door, and next to her is a knight holding a tray of prepared dishes for the tea party. Without shifting his gaze to the side, the guy, still in a focused state, asks that the couple take a seat across from each other on the couch. Beautiful cakes decorated with berries immediately materialize on the table. Obviously, something more interesting this time around. Already picking up the kettle, the girl is interrupted halfway through. Cedric suddenly strikes up a conversation about the nurse who was fired a short time ago. Surprised that the rumors have already reached the master himself, the lady tries to explain the reasons she is expected to do so. She was not faithful to her duty and paid for it. Placing the mug of tea on the table, making a distinctive sound, the man seems angry. He almost screams, because it was for these stupid reasons that the girl decided to throw the woman out right after she woke up. Freezing, the girl tries not to give any sign. She's really quite startled by this reaction, but it's little things. Bowing her head slightly, as if asking what the problem is, the pretty girl interjects to ask what the big deal is. Grabbing his head with his hand, the boy sank somewhere deep into his thoughts. Apparently, the nurse made some 2 unforgivable mistakes while the girl was sick. He berates himself because he should have dealt with it, but it's best to just keep talking. Next time it's better to give a warning before you do something. Trying to continue to keep his composure and keep his spirits up, Cedric warns that rumors might start flying, and this is not one of the most desirable things in the castle. Reflecting on all that has happened, the brunette remembers the severance package. She gave a good amount of money, so it's odd that they're still saying anything about her. Moving a little closer to ask the right question, the brother tries to see if Lilian is shaved by all that is going on and the consequences. Making herself look innocent, the young woman looks away, not understanding why she should be afraid of anyone when there is no need for it. Folding her hands in her lap, the lady tries to explain herself. Her brother is the master of the Turin land, which means that as a member of the family, she has nothing to fear. Surprise at the slight emotion creeps across the guy's face, but then he is confused. He can't believe his ears. The little girl who was so weak and scared about literally everything is now such a serious woman who believes in her brother unquestioningly. Realizing that this is perfectly normal, the man extends his hand, saying that there is nothing to worry about here. An elderly woman enters the room and bows. Miss Haywood will now take care of the young mistress. It's a new responsibility. I think the nerves are starting to give way, because the girl is literally shaking. She recalls that the maid is in charge of all the maids on the estate, and it would be too much of an honor. Squatting down, the girl talks about how the lady has nothing she is not worthy of in this world. That's the plain truth. Realizing that the brunette is still not entirely comfortable with herself, the lady offers to be her personal servant until the right person is found. Not realizing how she got so lucky, Lilian still remains a bit sad, digesting all the information. Such conditions more than satisfied her. Abruptly standing up, the woman suddenly mentions the cakes that need to be picked out. The doctor should be coming soon to give the bitter medicine, and the cakes will help make up for the taste. Trying to wave her hand in protest, the girl assures him that everything is fine. She doesn't need candy to get a checkup. Freezing, the maid can't believe her ears. Usually no one agrees to such a procedure without gifts. There is a knock at the door, and the girl immediately realizes it is Winston Shaw. The doctor has arrived, and everything will take place in a matter of minutes. There is a sepulchral silence in the room. Even though there are more than 3 people here, it makes absolutely no difference. Reaching out to look at the patient's throat, the doctor notices that the girl is surprisingly calm today. The patient smiles, saying she realized that Shaw is protecting her life, which means it's best to act humble. As if growing tired of all this nonsense, the man notices that the brunette used to act very differently. She was very sick, and she had plenty of time to realize it all. Even after these conversations, there is no turning away from the medicine, so a jar appears in the doctor's hands. Without any rebuke or shouting, the beauty accepts the vial, agreeing and saying it's perfectly fine. Tilting her head, the maiden begins to slowly drink the pink liquid while the guy stands waiting. Tears come to my eyes. Crying is completely discouraged, especially since it would show the complexity of the situation, but the medication causes an unnecessary reaction. Putting her hand to her mouth, the girl realizes that it is too bitter. The maid runs up to the mistress, starting to say that he is no doctor since he didn't warn her that it would be so bitter. Not paying any attention, Shaw says he knew that Lilian would have no problem drinking the right mixture. It's just a baby, and there's nothing unusual about it. The room no longer falls completely silent. A discussion is heard in the hall from the 2 individuals. Cedric starts to ask Alan what if there's something wrong with Lilian, but literally shuts up after a second, saying that none of this is true. Bowing and expressing his sincere emotions, the knight wonders if they want to know from him what he thinks of the young mistress in general. Turning towards the guy, the young man notices that his interlocutor has been acting suspiciously strange lately, although he says he doesn't understand anything, because everything is fine. Frowning his eyebrows, Cedric asks, since when has Havis been so affectionate with Lilian? Today, that one tried to make conversation, and also helped with the tray before they appeared in the room. Trying to change the subject, the knight states that all grudges are in the past. The Marquise is already in the other world, so there is no reason to hate the girl, because she is not guilty of anything. Not even giving even a chance to be silent, the head asks to continue, to find out more details of what he needed. Havis recalls the nurse who was dared to kick out by none other than Mistress. It was a strange but bold move, because everyone knew that the one was just like the Marquise. Bowing, the man realizes he was wrong about the baby. She definitely has the blood of the Isler family running through her, and it's evident even in the actions she performs. A smile breaks across Cedric's face after turning to his friend again. He wants to say thank you or ask more questions. That sarcastic look on his face makes the whole situation clear. He should remind Alan that Lilian is his little sister. The 2 are already ready to sizzle each other with a look or do some other rash act. The doctor interrupts the young people to continue the conversation. The man immediately asks if the girl has any problems. Keeping his cool, the guy says everything is fine. However, there is something else here. The head interrupts the doctor, finishing the sentence for him. The girl is clearly not telling me something, and has also stopped being stubborn and acting like a kid her age. It's disturbing that the girl has lost her curiosity, as if she already knows everything ahead of time. She asks nothing, and only smiles sweetly every visit. I hate to admit it, but it was as if the beauty had lost all her emotions without any right of return. Always remains unfailingly quiet, pretending that everything is perfectly fine no matter the situation. The brunette is as calm as a calm, smooth lake. This association is not due to anything, but she has the eyes of a learned man, which seems impossible at her age. Cedric looks away sadly. He's worried about his sister, because it's like she's suddenly grown up. It happened at a certain point. Losing all patience and losing his self-control, the head suddenly stands up, placing his hands on the table with a distinctive clap. Turning to the doctor, he asks a question of interest to all present. It may not be real, but a girl can't behave like that. It's possible, but few people can stay calm in front of healers, not even adults. But Lilian doesn't show it, remaining in the same form. Shaw suddenly asks if the guys have tried asking Mistress directly. Faces that become even more surprised make the answer clear. The door opens quietly, and one of the maids peeks out. It alerts the news that the landlady thinks it would be nice to have tea outdoors today. Everyone in the room turns toward the exit. One thought is the most correct thought. This situation gives you a good chance to find out. In the garden, where everything is already blooming and smelling, there are 6 maids standing around getting everything ready. The tea-set table is set for 2 people. Calling her chief servant, the girl bends down to reach the woman's ear and asks for something, to which she receives a satisfactory answer, for everything will be done in the best way. Turning to the others in the courtyard, Miss Havis announces that the gentlemen are thanking each of the girls, and everyone will be thanked for that. The maids didn't quite expect such generosity, but at the same time, it couldn't help but please the people. The girl was distracted, examining the tea table for a needed replacement or just to assess. The brunette asks everyone to leave and get to work. A rapturous sigh cannot be contained by any means. The table is too beautiful, as well as all the goodies on it. However, a wave of sadness, from nowhere, covers the heroine. It may be that a brother will just decide not to show up because of the sheer amount of things to do. Hearing such words, the maid turns and tries to assure that the man will certainly accept the invitation and come. Leaning over the table as she continues to recount her anxieties, the girl fears that it will all go in vain, but this is not the case. Fixing Lilian's hair, Havis reminds her that everything in Turin is just for her, and all the maids are happy to help. Smiling, Islar says he too appreciates the labor and doesn't want things to just go to waste without a chance. As if frozen, the woman froze, beginning to marvel at such beautiful words on mistress's part. It's too sweet. Brother is too busy, and he didn't keep his promise last time, so what's stopping him from not doing it this time? The girl freezes when she hears a man's voice behind her. Turning around, she notices the person she wanted to see the most. She is actually pleased that her fears were in vain in their own way. Not a second goes by as the brunette runs up to the guy and then hugs him tightly. It's beautiful tea party weather today. Continuing to smile, there was no way the girl could get away from her brother. She can't describe what emotions are being felt in the moment. Picking Lilian up in his arms, the young man has something on his mind. I can't believe that everything that is happening is a happy reality. Life has always carried so many occasions for carefree joy. It's sometimes hard for people to see that, and it was a child who helped accomplish the unreal. A hand descends on her companion's head, then gently rubs her hair. It's little moments like that that bring a huge pile of happiness. It's impossible to describe in words. Already sitting at the table, the man suddenly finds a topic of conversation that interests him. He asked if he could ask one question. Continuing to eat her brownie, Lilian doesn't dare refuse, so of course she agrees, promising to answer any questions. A little embarrassed, for such a thing is not very easy to ask, the lad inquires what was the opinion of the engagement after all. Stopping chewing, the girl remarks that the young man seems to be interested to know if the beautiful girl has agreed to her engagement against her will. The brother wants to catch the interviewee in order to catch her questioning and get an answer. Things are getting steep, but the lady has answers for everything. There were 3 brothers in the kingdom. They were, after all, princes of Rufenbein, one of the strongest kingdoms in the world, and there was no way to dispute that. The first took the throne after his father, but died under unknown circumstances, while still very young before he could begin his full reign. The third brother was too young and chose not to claim the throne. The emperor became the second prince, to whom all roads were open. A lot of blood was spilled back then. One of the victims of the palace coup was the father and past protector of the Turin land. After everything that had happened, an engagement to the third son, the guardian and protector of the crown prince, who could also curb the reigning second son, seemed like something natural. As far as Lilian knew, her fiancé has a strong army. Only the power of Prince Damon was able to quell all rebellions in 4 years. He ascended the throne at the age of 13. In the plot of the book, although he didn't love his wife, he lost his sanity after her death. The war had made him violent. In spite of the whole situation, Damon was always a faithful husband, for the maiden never managed to find out about any illegitimate heirs. The man had been tolerant of Lilian's past snapping at her son. If you think about it that way, his character isn't that terrible, so it'll be fine. Looking back at the whole plot, you could be sure that the prince just wasn't interested in his wife enough that he didn't want to punish her for being rude to his son. For the current girl, it doesn't matter at all. Husband is not a spender, very wealthy, and knows how to run a business. It's considered happiness. In the concept of the story, the guy outbid half the empire, but still, as a groom, he doesn't seem like such a bad option for a maiden. The lady didn't count on much in a marriage not for love. Trying not to be forgotten in her thoughts, the lady mentioned that the engagement was a settled matter. Suddenly, the brother mentions that he could do something about it, but is interrupted. The brunette isn't about to sacrifice her future. Considerations are also present in her mind, and she wants to make the best of it. Even if this marriage is strange, Cedric would never give her away to a hopeless man. Agreeing, the man is still trying to say something. Lilian doesn't listen, but simply extends her hand, announcing that this is her companion, ally, and the one with whom she will be bound by blood. She is a daughter of the land of Hrin, and this wedding is her responsibility and duty. The girl is ready to marry the emperor despite all the problems. Squinting a little, the boy observes that those eyes show everything already ahead. It's hard not to notice the humility and fire within. It's like she's glowing from within, realizing her plight and offering no resistance. It's not a happy thing, but it's not something terrible. Only a person who has already decided everything for himself has this view. You shouldn't try to change anyone's mind, because it will be easier that way. Getting a little more sad, the man realizes that his sister will never be with him again, and tries to please him. A voice pulls me out of my thoughts. Virgo wants to ask something. She begins to ask from afar about whether she should become part of the Imperial family in the future. The next words seem even wilder than before. Belle asks to hire a teacher to match her future status. The two young men sit in complete silence, just looking at each other and digesting all the information that has been said. A little nervously, the girl grabs her fingers onto her plate. She has never studied etiquette and does not want to tarnish the honorable name of her brother and all of Turin. The guy interrupts his silence and asks how come no one has started training her until now. Not realizing what the big deal is, the girl only continues to stare at her interlocutor. She thought it was nothing out of the ordinary to ask, but it turned out to be the opposite. Thinking about something of his own, the Duke doesn't understand why things are so complicated now. No one did anything until they were 12 years old, but the Marquis and his father were required to start schooling. This girl was obviously locked up somewhere without any right to learn, or she was just forgotten about, because no one wanted to waste anyone's time. A quiet voice interrupts some memories. Cedric is called out once again, hoping he will answer the question posed. He promises that he will find the best teacher, to which he gets a lot of thanks from his sister. The next thing the guy is interested in is what Lilian would like to learn. First, it's etiquette, art, and second. Since art supplies have already been donated, she'd like to learn how to draw. Next on the list is music and some foreign language. Curling her fingers, the beauty continued to count the items she needed. As if mesmerized, the guy admired the girl, realizing how much she still had to do in this life. He should secure her future. Holding an intricate pendant adorned with some kind of stone, Islar notes that it was much more complicated than she thought. The maid tries to cheer up her ward. She's only been learning for 3 days, and this is her first job, which means things will be much better and easier from here on out. The head should also like the work, but according to the heroine, it's only because her brother is excited about any endeavor she undertakes. The pendant really looks like an expensive gift and would suit anyone. Stopping her praise, the maid announces that the etiquette teacher will be arriving soon. Reflecting on everything that has happened, the woman suddenly says that she thought very differently. It seemed to her that it would take much longer to find the right teacher. Quickly changing the subject, the brunette grabs hold of Lilian and asks her to come with her. After all, it wouldn't do to keep the teacher waiting a minute. Hands gently spread silky, dark-colored hair. They should be tidied up and then given a lovely hairstyle. Taking the comb in her hands, the lady brings it up to the girl's head and then carefully starts doing what she needs to do to get a beautiful result. Belle really wonders what kind of teacher this teacher is. Havis asks what kind of people Islar prefers, but she replies that she doesn't know. Perhaps it should be a woman. From there, everything continues in silence. The maid will have to finalize the hair arrangements and then take the girl to the gym where classes will be held. As a rule, girls from noble families are taught by prim ladies. Though the lady had never had anything like this, but she had heard similar stories many times. Already fully prepared, the brunette slowly enters the room. The beautiful dress glows welcomingly in the sunshine. Right in front of her on the couch sits a man in a nice beige suit that seems to match his hair color. The lady couldn't believe it was a guy, and her expectations were not met. Reading absolutely every important emotion, the instructor hastens to assure her that he will not be teaching her for a long time. He's just here to explain the basics. The girl hesitated a little, but her thoughts, as if on their own, tried to calm her down. This man is on his brother's side and probably knows about the wedding. Thinking that it was no longer worth it to stand like a huddled doll, the beautiful girl grasps the hem of her silky dress with her hand. Crouching in a curtsy, she bows her head, apologizing for bringing a belated greeting. Virgo is happy to be trained by just such people. Trying not to show any emotion, the blonde frowned and suggested that they start soon so as not to waste too much time. In the original novel, there was a chapter on this. It described everything in detail and even how this very lesson would go. Lilian Isler, of course, knew nothing of palace affairs, but she didn't want to give anyone an excuse to ridicule manners, so she knew all the basics perfectly well. She knew exactly how to behave so as not to disappoint anyone. Up until this point, she hadn't been bothered by the situation so much, leaving her with a normal impression. After only a little while, realizing the girl's true strength, the man says he can consider her the pride of Turin. Her knowledge is impeccable. Smiling slightly, the lady assures me that she shouldn't be praised so much. The brother, because of the big age difference, is also surprised at all the progress his sister is making. The teacher hums, speaking of the kinship ties that seem to be a little too strong. It's just a kindness that has to be reciprocated. There's nothing complicated or unusual about it. The blonde doesn't say a word in response, for he needs a minute to think it over precisely and not to rush to hasty conclusions that could lead to trouble. He has to listen to it all, but after all the lines, he realizes how masterfully the girl has managed to grasp the basics. She should be happy about this outcome. The topic of conversation imperceptibly changes when the man asks if he can try the very famous tea about which too many rumors have been creeping lately. Realizing this is a success, Lilian of course agrees. She can't deny someone such a simple request. Already after 10 minutes, the young lady is pouring tea into cups, trying to do it as carefully as possible due to her clumsiness. There are all sorts of thoughts swirling around in the interlocutor's head. Eiler is very young, but not at all serious, and her movements are incredibly skillful. It's hard to describe in words. Reflections are interrupted by a question asking about sweets. Virgo wonders if the teacher likes sweets, in order to perhaps offer him something. The response follows immediately. The man doesn't really like that sort of thing, so a small hand moves the mug with the poured tea toward the other end of the table where the guy is sitting. Taking the drink, the blonde brings the cup to his lips, about to finally quench his thirst. He was thirsty, and so such a tea party wouldn't hurt anything. Literally, after one single sip, the teacher starts trying hard not to spit, because the tea tastes just disgusting. It's still the same weird formula. Unfortunately, Lilian had not achieved the coveted knack for brewing tea. The girl mentions that the tea might taste a little unusual, although a slightly different epithet could be used here. Belle was still blissfully unaware of just how awful her tea was, even if the expression on the taster's face expressed every emotion. The man tries not to cry as he continues to assure me that the flavor is unfamiliar, but still quite good. It's just a pure lie that no one will ever know about. It is simply impossible to disappoint such a lovely person, because looking at her radiant face, one feels sorry for all the effort spent while preparing this miracle tea. The girl is always happy to offer her tea or goodies to cheer up everyone around her. This time it was the same scenario, no switch. Under those circumstances, there was no way the blonde could say he didn't taste good. Even if the potions were 100 times worse, he could skillfully lie. The tea party continues despite the whole situation. A girl feels it's her duty to ask how the event is going, even if it's not really important. The teacher notices that the brownie is much better than expected. The flavor is no longer so awful, but even quite tolerable. It's a huge honor for him because Lilian personally made his tea for him. Putting her hand to her breast, the beauty says that there can be nothing more honorable than making tea for the great Duke of Hrin himself. This person was indeed a rather high-ranking individual. A bit nervously, the man asks when the girl managed to guess, to which he receives a quite logical answer. The Duke didn't even hide his origins. Smiling, the blonde man apologized, but he really wanted to know what his grandson's future wife was like. Nothing against it, but it was an important step. This person is the maternal grandfather of 3 brothers of the Imperial family, as well as the head of the Duchy of Hrin and the County of Palmian, Admiral of the Alt Sea. The man has earned the respect of the respected and common people of the world. Now the blonde man asks what a girl would do without looking at his status and taking someone else to tea. With a little hesitation, the girl turns her head. It sounds like she's already thought of something, but is just a little shy about telling me about it for no good reason. Smiling, the beauty finally finds an answer and decides to tell her about it. If the man wasn't Duke Hrin, they would never have seen each other in this life. There simply wouldn't be any reason, after all, her brother cares for Lilian very much, and no outsider would even be able to pass into the castle or approach without permission. Light laughter breaks out, filling the entire room. Opening the door, one of the Duke's servants stares in surprise. The man never laughs so loudly, and it raises suspicion. Calming down a bit, Hrin remarks that since he has decided to play a joke on his future daughter-in-law, he will pay for it. Such company was indeed to his liking. Suddenly, the man offers to help with something, saying that the maiden can ask for anything because she will not be refused. A little surprised, the brunette digests the information as it feels like a test. Continuing to smile, the blonde man notices that the interlocutor is quite intelligent and therefore deserves something special. Perhaps the best is some of the lands or stones his daughter owned. Somehow, trying not to express her emotion or confusion, the beauty doesn't realize if she's really going to be given the belongings of the current emperor's late mother. I want to ask a million questions no matter what. Trying to think of at least something, Lilian started making a list in her head. If you don't decide what to ask for right now, then the person you're talking to will give you something of unsustainable value. A strange yet workable idea comes to mind. You can't help but like it, because before that it was impossible to think about anything. In my hands is a pendant that was made just yesterday. It would be nice to take the first step and give some item to the Duke herself. Finding the answer, the lady says that if she were to get something as a gift, it would be too luxurious. She has a wish of her own, and she would like a man to accept this pendant as a gift. Not finding anything to say, the blonde is left confused. He wanted to give something, but it turned out the other way around. If Hrin doesn't choose to accept this thing, it will disappoint the girl. The brunette will be proud for the rest of her life that she was able to make such a person happy, so making herself look as good-natured as possible, she asks if it's okay to do that. The Duke clearly has nothing to say. The words ran out, for his sister-in-law had clearly beaten him. Such a thing could be a nice addition, even if she wasn't given anything. The castle is once again filled with good laughter, while Grandpa praises the ingenue for her idea. It's always nice to receive something handmade as a gift. Clutching his hand in the palm of his hand, there's still no way the guy will take it off the table. I don't feel like trying to talk in facts or feel anything. Even though it is well past daylight outside, the room is completely immersed in darkness. This creates a dark image for the blonde man sitting at the table. One of the servants, holding some sort of stack of paper, announces his arrival. He addresses the emperor, saying that he had heard that he had been rather rude to some other individuals today. Putting a finger to his lips, the guy smirks, then reminds her of what they were talking about back yesterday. The gentleman had said this many times before and didn't want to repeat himself again. The man was none other than Lilian's fiancé, Damon Palmyra Ernst Rufenbein. The conversation turned to his older brother, who apparently wasn't stupid enough to kill Matteo out of the blue. Already tired of the young man, the butler curses him, for behind that sweet face lurks an evil essence. He's still wondering just when the tongue turned to threaten to send him to his uncle's house if the kid doesn't eat. Pretending he doesn't understand anything, the guy assures me he didn't mean it. But obviously that doesn't change anything. Because of this very uncle, the crown prince lost his father. Making a face, the blonde declares that it's Ivan's fault, since he's entrusted to look after the child. Almost then, screaming, the interlocutor protests, for he did not know that the prince would treat the child so badly. Knight Ivan Isaac stands, unsure of how to continue the discussion. Sometimes it's quite difficult to try to strike up even some sort of conversation with the ruling emperor. He's old enough, but sometimes he behaves worse than a child. Making eye contact, thus expressing his obvious displeasure, the blonde gathers his thoughts to speak his mind on such ignorance. There seem to be too many people around the prince lately who don't care about life too much. Bowing his head, the brunette says he was short-sighted, then apologizes. Moving closer to the gentleman, the man asks how much sleep the guy managed to get this night in general. It feels like only a few hours, if not less. Trying to avoid answering, the young man simply waved his hand, showing his pure indifference. It seems that the host managed to get exactly 0 sleep, and after that, he just went about his normal duties. Changing the subject, the blonde man orders that Ivan handle the situation with Matteo himself. If he wishes to live, then so be it, and if he wishes to die, then that's where it ends. If it ends miserably, the prince will even feel better, because there will be no burden. He shouldn't speak so poorly of his own blood. The words are interrupted by the knight, who announces that the belt has already been repaired, and so he has already brought it. Taking the box from the servant's hands, the blonde man hums, peering inside. He immediately has a few questions about the origin of a thing he's never seen before. He asks a question, trying to find out what it even is. The man only looks away in surprise in response, saying that it looks like some sort of pendant. Taking the belt in his hand, the guy thinks of something. He has never seen the thing before, but it turns out that the Grand Duke ordered the pendant to be attached, and Ivan complied with the order without question. His gaze drops to the thing, for the prince does not quite understand the origin of the item. Even if his grandfather asked him to take that step, it makes absolutely no difference. Isaac steps back, giving the impression that he's just afraid of something, even if it can't be anything strange. Changing the subject once again, the blonde man turns toward the person he's talking to and asks what's under his armpit. He held something there during the entire conversation without changing position. Realizing that the servant had made a mistake, he hastily pulls out some kind of bundle. He had completely forgotten about it, but after a reminder, he remembered that it was one of the main things he had been assigned. In his hand is a stack of papers wrapped in dark-colored paper and bound with a fresh seal. These are some documents that were asked to be given to the emperor. Inside is a certificate of engagement. Under the laws of the empire, within 3 years of receiving the certificate, one could break off the marriage at any time. Because of this law, there have been many betrayals and collapses of enemy alliances during wars. A lot of families didn't take their chance, because there was only one way to avoid it, and that was to exchange certificates 3 years before the wedding. Everyone wanted to have freedom. There were only 2 cases about which testimonies were exchanged in advance. One is when the young love each other so much that they are unable to wait for the age of marriage. Another case is when an unbreakable blood alliance is necessary. This is exactly the right origin for this Damien situation. Eyes lowered to the paper, and then a quick run through the pages. Knight congratulates, for with this paper the lad will become an officially married man. The name displayed on the paper was Lilian Marystard Islar. The man says it would be worthwhile now to learn the name of the girl with whom his lordship will enter into marriage in 3 years' time. Without even finishing the sentence, the blonde tosses the documents aside, paying no attention to the shouting. Ivan warns that this is a pretty important item and should be handled much more carefully than etiquette dictates. The young man snarks again, stating that if they carry such importance, then let Isaac carry them out of here himself. Sitting down on his knees, the man starts picking up documents from the floor because those are scattered literally everywhere. He genuinely feels sorry for the girl who will become this child's wife. Interrupting the servant's most interesting occupation, the head orders the troops to be prepared for imminent dispatch to the front. It turns out that reports have already come in from the north, which means that a new attack and war is coming soon. Suddenly remembering one very important thing, the young man asks about the order. There is no way he could have come at the same time as the news. Usually at least 2 weeks, maybe more, between these events. It turns out that the order never came, which means, according to the knight, there is no point in mobilizing the army. It would only lose their power, and it would also undermine faith in the emperor who so neglects people. Putting a hand to his cheek, the kid gives the interlocutor a bored look. It's immediately clear what his little brother is thinking. The guardian must be absent in order for the guardian to reach out to Matteo. Stammering a little, Ivan interjects to ask what it means. Sighing, the young man mentions that he's talked about this before. Right now, no one is going to kill anyone, since Matteo is officially the crown prince. Seizing power through assassination cannot be absolute. The counts would be displeased, and under such circumstances, Claude would not be able to kill the boy. It seems like the brother is plotting all the riots that are going on. This rascal will definitely take his brother alive, and after that, he will definitely force him to give up his rights to the throne by putting his signature on the necessary papers. This will all clearly be to the blonde boy's benefit, however, no one knows how it will all end for the boy. Things can get pretty dire. Only after 10 or 15 years, when nobody cares anymore, will he die at the hands of a man. It will be set up, but executed quite skillfully. The knight was a little confused. For such an accurate and detailed chain of events, taken from nowhere, he had never before encountered in his life. Everything was set up just perfectly. A hand rests on the arm of the chair because the owner wants to get up and take his favorite window seat again. Smiling his sly smile, the man remarks that it's pretty easy to understand. He would do the same thing, for they are brothers, and even their way of thinking is absolutely identical. The older woman claps her hands, encouraging Lilian. According to her, she's pretty good at it, and maybe she even has a natural talent. The etiquette teacher, the head marquis of the Lannister family, became the girl's teacher. My legs seem to tangle up on their own. Heels are rather uncomfortable shoes, for they slow down and make a girl as clumsy as an elephant. The brunette is wearing a beautiful dress made of pure silk. It seemed to flow over the body like a soft wave filling the space. The beauty is simply extraordinary in such attire. That would be enough to participate in the Silver Flower Ball. Belle is a little worried, but the teacher assures her that everything will be fine. Raising a finger, the woman begins an interesting story. If the maiden appears regularly in the societies of certain families, it will bind them in bonds. Not really listening to all the words that are pouring out of her mouth, Lilian only tries to smile amiably, not disrupting the tirade. The clever head begins to be filled with strange thoughts. Not that the princess has never joined the society, but this is all going to be quite an exciting event. She was once mocked for her lack of skill. The girls have said more than once that she doesn't even know etiquette, and the basics didn't help her. This has always saddened the protagonist. Finally interrupting the lady, the young lady asks what will happen if she makes a mistake. She could dishonor those who taught her everything in this world. The woman hesitates. Being more than confident in her beliefs, the interviewee claims that if the beauty behaves exactly the same way she did in front of her, then she will certainly not be embarrassed in front of anyone. The girl freezes and stares at the person standing next to her with hopeful eyes. She wants to believe in everything that's going on, no matter what. The woman tells her to relax, because it won't go as horribly as one might imagine. Right now, the only thing you can do is prepare for something specific. Cedric sits on a chair in the courtyard at another tea party organized by his sister. He is always interested in all the progress, and so he asks how the preparation for the first social event is going. Smiling, the girl tries not to show any sign of it, simply saying that Lady Havis and Lannister are helping 100%, and thus doing the little princess a huge favor. A shaking hand almost gives away real emotion, but the lady quickly pulls herself together, clenching her palm into a fist. This time, it won't go the same way as in the book, because the etiquette is memorized. A butler appears from nowhere and calls out to the head. He had some important questions that apparently wouldn't wait for even an extra 10 minutes of time. Moving closer, the man holds out a box, saying that this gift was sent by the Grand Duke in honor of some event. The brunette immediately perks up as she realizes who she's talking about. Not hiding his surprise, the guy hums, looking at the thing with interest. Everyone can't wait to find out what's inside. It can't help but change things around. Islar tries not to show any sign of it, for at the same time he is a little nervous, though he has more of a confusion raging through him. He did not think any gift would be sent in return. Covering her eyes a little, the girl holds up a mug of tea and then slowly sips a sip. This returned courtesy from the Duke, to whom she presented her first pendant, asking him to accept it. Changing all his emotions, the young man asks to open the box. I mean, he's curious about how this is going to go down too, so there's absolutely no point in hiding anything. Lifting the lid, the beauty agrees. Surely Cedric will say, as usual, that there's nothing ordinary here. He was able to give everything in this world already. The maid has other plans, and she oops in surprise, covering her mouth with her hand. In a box on a velvet stand sits a beautiful necklace. Finishes with stones cost millions, and you can see it from afar. A note lying nearby announces that this gift marks the beginning of a great battle, from which one wishes to emerge a good fighter. All those gathered exclaimed in one voice, not hiding their surprise. It's a thing of beauty, not a thing. Even the most soulless would not have been able to remain silent under such circumstances. The knight wants to prompt so he doesn't agonize, so he bows, explaining that it's one of the Tears of Light jewelry series. This necklace was owned by the Empress, and it is one of the most famous pieces. Stammering a little, the mistress interjects to ask if it's true. Pushing the gift aside, she declares, after briefly thinking, that she cannot accept such a valuable item. She's just not strong enough. Exhaling air and resigning himself to his fate, the brunette agrees. However, it is quite difficult to refuse a gift that the Grand Duke himself has sent. That would be ignorant. Thinking about the future, the girl realizes that if she wears it on her first outing into society, she'll probably get a lot more attention than she'd really like. Trying not to panic, the princess continues to run millions of thoughts through her head. It's important for her to know what she should do in the end. Such decisions are quite difficult to make. Sipping his tea, Cedric thought about the thing as well. He gets a little ticked off, but no matter what he presents, nothing can top a man. He clearly did his best when choosing a necklace for his daughter-in-law. This engagement is kept a closely guarded secret, so remembering it, the brunette suddenly realizes that if she uses the necklace, everyone will realize that she is the prince's bride, and all will be immediately lost long before the wedding. Folding his hands on the table in a sign of calm, his brother assures him that there's nothing to worry about. At this ball, there will be only representatives of noble families who wish this country a new emperor and who are aware of the situation. Without hiding his slight disdain, the lad remarks that the Duke must have given that necklace for those around him to notice, and without any words, realize what was going on. This item also served as a light reminder for the head not to behave too rudely with the future princess. He's not allowed even if it's his own sister. Quickly changing the subject, realizing that the conversation has gone on too long, the young man wishes to have a good time and find new friends with whom he would enjoy being in society. Translating her gaze to the box again, the girl still has no way of understanding why there remains a strange uneasiness inside that doesn't give any peace. I want to scream or hide somewhere. The young lady is ready to make her debut, but a few more touches remain before she shows up in the audience and blows everyone away. A beautiful girl runs into the hall and calls out to the teacher, holding a beautiful bouquet of flowers. The lady turns toward her ward and greets Lilian without any embarrassment or show of emotion. She had to wait quite a bit, but it was worth it, because the princess was on time after all.